Chapter 4, using verbal and nonverbal messages in a group. Preview, verbal communication in small groups, nonverbal communication in small groups, comparing face-to-face and computer-mediated group communication. All is communication, but this is different types of communication. So creative messages in a small group. You have messages, sounds, words, actions interpreted holistically by the group members, verbal, nonverbal, and actions. So this is the mistake a lot of times that people make. They think communication is just talking. It's not. I want you to think about this. When you're in a small group of people, or you're with someone and you see they don't say a word, they don't say a word, but you observe their behavior, their body language, and it tells you something. It can tell you that the person's upset. It can tell you that the person is excited. It may even tell you, if you have certain type of training or you pick up on vibe, that the person is lying. That's nonverbal. And then the actions. Then what do people do? Watching people's actions. Verbal, yes, we know about the verbal, but the nonverbal and actions. Sometimes people don't say a word and they don't behave a certain way, but they do something that actually communicates something to you or something to the group. Using language appropriately in group involves adjusting to the symbolic nature of the language. Because words are symbols, they do not have meanings in and of themselves. Guard against bypassing, in which two or more people have different meanings for a word but do not realize it. Abstract words allow for great discussion but come with some limitations, or so use concrete examples and be precise as possible. So when you think about the nature of this, words are not symbolic all to themselves. They do not have meaning in and of themselves. But when you say and you do things or whatever, that could have the meaning. And that bypassing is very important, because this is, you have two or more people with different meanings for a word. This could be something that can be very complicated and difficult depending upon what the situation is. In other words, if you have trying to help somebody and you're using a word or some words, but you mean them one way and somebody else means it takes them another way, you may be at an impasse, and this could cause problems for you, particularly in a work environment. But even in personal relationships, it can cause misunderstandings. And abstract words allow for great discussion, but come with some limitations. So use concrete examples and be precise. So if you look at the abstract words and you use them, make sure people know what you're talking about. And here's something too. I've encountered this and seen this in my life, where you have someone who wants to show everybody how smart they are by using big words and words that people were not familiar with. The problem is, it didn't make him look smart. It actually made him look like an idiot, because the people that he was trying to talk to didn't understand what he was saying. And realistically, he was trying to tell them to do something. They didn't fully know how to do it. After which, someone had to follow up behind him in an informal capacity and interpret what the guy had said during the meeting. Organizing your remarks in the group's discussion. Relate a statement to the preceding statement. Make one point at a time. State your case directly and concisely. Keep yourself and other members on topic. So when you're talking about within a small group, state the purpose. Make a statement. What is the statement here? Strong statement. And bullet points, one point at a time, because you want people to follow you. State your case directly and concisely. And when you do that, that usually involves staying away from opinions, giving facts, and giving examples. Let's give you an example. You may not like the fact that I told you 2 and 2 is 4, but that's a fact you can't refute. But if I told you how I feel about something, you can refute that. So that's not a direct or concise something right there. It leaves it up for debate. Keep yourself and others on topic. One of the things you find in small groups, you may have somebody when you all are talking about A, B, and C, another person wants to bring up D, E, and F. And you have to make sure that doesn't happen, because you have to stay on a task at hand. Sometimes people want to get ahead, and then sometimes people want to go back and stuff, but that's not the purpose of the meeting or the conversation. Be sensitive to the emotions of others. So be sensitive to the emotions of others. Recognize trigger words that may trigger strong emotional reactions. Understand that when you're dealing with diverse people, you have to take into consideration people's feelings. And if you're in a diverse company, and I just give you an example. If you're a guy who's used to working in an environment that's predominantly all male, and now you're working in a mixed company with females, you may have to watch some of the things that you say or how you say them, because they could be viewed be as offensive, or vice versa. If you're a person and you're a female, and you're used to working around a lot of females, and now you have a few males that comes into the group. And I give you a prime example in the field of nursing, in the field of teaching, in the field of HR. These are female-dominated industries. So when a male comes into, he would be the person who's being added to the mix. You may have to watch how you say things because now you have a mixed company. Emotive words trigger strong emotional responses. So think about when you're using words, try to stay from words that's going to drive strong emotional responses from other people. And I just give you an example. You may say, well, you know what? Realistically, this company could do really good, but because we elected a new president, it's affecting how we do things and stuff. That's really messing us up. Well, guess what? 4 or 5, if it's 10 of y'all, 4 or 5 people in that group could have voted for that president. So, see, that's going to trigger a response from some folks, and that's something that you have to be aware of. Substitute neutral words for potential trigger words. Find neutral words for potential trigger words in things that And I give you an example. A trigger word could be you all, or you guys, or you people. A neutral word for that will be us, we. And never name call. Never single people out on name call. One of the things I find is when you single people out and you name call, you basically. I've never known people to embarrass adults and get good results. And that's what name calling them will do. When you have small these groups and stuff, there are usually not formal, but usually informal rules. And people know what they are. Follow them. You know what they are. Follow them. Now, if it's something for a situation where you need to set up some rules and set them up, but follow the rules and make sure they're applicable to everybody. One of the problems I've noticed in the past is if you have a situation where you have some rules and you've got multiple people, and let's say you have 15 people. Of the 15, 14 of them are abiding by the rules, but one is not. You'll have to address that. Code switch appropriately. Use language, terminology, jargon, and rules of the group. So whenever people are using these things, there have to be things that's actually universal within that group. Maybe not within that organization or that company, but within that group, particularly in small, tight-knit groups. In a professional, business, or educational group, use standard sentence structure, vocabulary, and correct grammar. This is one of the things when you're in a professional world. Here's what I can tell you, and I've seen this before. Slang. A lot of times you have in the English language, depending upon what part of the country you're from, we all have various things, words, slang language, or words that we'll use at times. The problem is it's not universal. It's not, and it's a very bad problem for people who don't speak English as a secondary language. And even though they may have a good grasp of the English language, slang is not in the dictionary. So when you're using jargon or you're giving examples or whatever else, try to ensure that you're using stuff that's standard sentence structure, vocabulary, and correct grammar. Because if you don't, your message may not be getting through loud and clear. Not the fact that they don't want to understand you. You're using things that's not standardized. Nonverbal communication, nonverbal behavior, anything in a message except the words themselves. So this is basically in a message except the words is itself. So, you have to be careful about that, the nonverbal. And a lot of times this is something where you see, I'm going to use this word, it's something that is implied. And even though you didn't say something, you implied something. And you got to stay away from those things, there's implications like that, because it might be something that can I've seen people get in trouble for that. So make sure I say what I mean and I mean what I say. Principles of nonverbal communication. Normal behaviors are ambiguous. So when you have normal behaviors, the ambiguous. You have to understand that there's what are supposed to normal behaviors. The norm is going to be different depending upon who you're talking to. And give you an example, a group of people in the workplace who are 45 and over, their norm won't be the same as a group of people in the workplace in the same company who are 30 and under. People cannot stop sending nonverbal behaviors even when they are not talking. In a small, people will send these things even when they're not talking by their posture, how they lean their head, how they shake their head, or if they're shaking their foot, or if they're anxious. So they're still sending these things even when they're not talking. When verbal and nonverbal behaviors clash, most people believe the nonverbal behaviors. That is actually the rule of thumb. I'll give you an example. I am telling you one thing, but my body language is telling you something else. It's actually telling, and give you an example, particularly in law enforcement, the field of law enforcement, where you're interviewing criminals and you're talking to folks. This is where they get a live experience that I know what the guy's telling me, but his body language is telling me he's lying, or he's awful nervous. It's something about his action and those words are not consistent. So what most people are going to choose to believe is a nonverbal. It's like, I know he said he didn't do it, but by virtue of him not being able to sit still, couldn't look me in the eyes, and shaking his leg the whole time he was saying it, it's telling me he's probably lying. So they're going to go with the nonverbal behavior. So functions of nonverbal messages. So they convey emotions. And I give you an example. Look at someone's face. You have this thing referred to as a poker face. This is for people actually, they don't show emotions when we're referred to as a poker face. Well, most people actually don't do that. Most people do have emotions that they convey, and one of the first places you can see it is in their face, body language. Reveal perceptions of relationships. So if you have perceptions of relationships within the small groups, you need to let those know what they are. For instance, if you have a perception that the person who's in charge of this group is a little too chummy with another person within the group, you got to, that's something that has to be addressed, because your perception may not be reality, or it may be reality, but you have to find out, because this ultimately can drive a wedge in the cohesiveness of a group. Supplemental words. You can find supplemental words and words that you may be able to use sometimes to supplement and for what you're talking about. Substitution words, to be able to substitute words. Give you an example. Well, I hate doing this. You know what? The word hate is strong. You may want to come back and say, you know what? Well, I'm not particularly fond of doing this. You see, I'm saying the same thing, but I say it a different way, because I substitute fond for hate. Regulate the flow of the discussion. Sometimes in small groups and stuff, you have to regulate the flow. And I give you an example. Are people not speaking up enough? Or are people speaking up too much? Or some person hogging too much time? You got to regulate the flow of the discussion and stuff. and make sure that it's productive and it's moving constantly. Contradict words and stuff. So if you have a situation where someone says something and you have a contradiction of words and stuff, you have to be able to pick up on that. For instance, if I'm saying that we have a surplus of equipment for this particular endeavor, and someone else goes back and says, well, actually, it's not. We don't have a surplus. We don't have a sufficient supply. So he says we don't have a sufficient supply, and I say we have a surplus. Those are contradict words. Okay, we need to figure out why we have that, and we try to work through that. There are many categories of nonverbal communication. Appearance is one. That's the first one. Most people, even if you're not trained, you just by growing up, you get used to saying, give you an example. Someone's 15 feet away from you. When you're not, and they're not talking to you, you may not hear what they're saying, but you see their appearance. And you see their posture, and you see everything, their movements and stuff. It'll say something about you. It may tell you that I see a guy over there who's very sure and confident of himself. Or it may tell you somebody, gosh, she looks awful nervous. Space and seating. So when you look at space and seating, how are you putting people together? Are you putting the people together in such that, that everybody's invading each other's personal space? Or do you have significant personal space And or do you allow people to actually determine their space in their seating because you trust folks? Group ecology is a group space that's created by seating choices and furniture arrangements. So initially, what you may find is a manager may set that up initially. As a group goes along and they get efficient what they're doing and they figure out the smartest ways they want to work and who works the most with whatever, they may make a few changes or whatever else. And if they're getting results, management usually doesn't care. And the appearance is how somebody looks. Facial expression, eye contact, that's the big one right there, because this is what most of the time most people are looking at, your face and your eyes. Movements, how are you moving? Are you moving in a manner that suggests that you're confident? Are you moving in a manner that suggests that that you're up to something, or you're nervous? Your voice. And we used to talk about the projection of the voice. Voice projection is very big. It's one of the first ways where people can determine whether or not first of all, are you confident in what you're saying? Do you project that you're a leader? And by how you speak to folks, how you address the crowd, are you respectful? Your voice means a lot. Voice projection. I actually took a course in the military to actually learn how to, what we refer to in the Army as utilize a command voice. A voice when people hear it, they will actually see it as someone who's in authority and will be willing to follow. Timing. When do you do things? Are you doing things? You can do the right thing, but do it at the wrong time. So timing, for instance, if you want to address an issue or something within a group, one of the ways you want to do that is you want to do that, if not at that time or shortly thereafter. You don't want to wait 2 weeks later, because it won't mean the same thing. Nonverbal behavior is guaranteed to get other members to dislike you. Now, this is very important. Show the others that you don't like them. Be unresponsive to others. Keep a poker face to make the others guess what you're thinking. Violate important group appearance norm. Violate your group's space norms. Indicate rejection by leaning away from the group. Violate your group's involvement norms. Violate your group's vocal cues. Violate the group's norms about timing. These are things right here. It's self-explanatory. If you do those, there will be somebody, if not multiple people, that will probably not particularly care for you or want to work with you. So comparing face-to-face and computer-mediated group communication. Verbal communication or words provide the foundation for both face-to-face and computer-mediated communication. Nonverbal communication operates differently in computer-mediated communication. If members cannot see one another, they will miss important facial expressions, gestures, and body language. This is one of the reasons why I've always said do not conduct important meetings or important conversations telephonically. Either you do them in person or you do them virtual, because it's vitally important, particularly if it's something of real significance or highly important. You need to see people's facial expressions, and you need to be able to see gestures and body language as much as you can, because that also is telling you something. When people tell me that I communicated a very serious situation or matter through a text or by telephone, I can tell them, well, you're already behind the 8 ball, because that was something that should have been done. If not face-to-face. Face-to-face is getting more difficult to do because we are now working in a global society where a lot of times people have team members and managers and stuff in different states, different countries, and different time zones. So the next best thing is going to be virtual. Compared to face-to-face communications, computer-mediated group has less social presence. Social presence, the degree to which a person feels that the other is actually present and doing an interaction. Emoticons are typical typographic symbols used in these conversations to convey a variety of emotions. So again, the degree of the person feels that the person's actually present and doing the interaction, they get more of that when you're actually talking to them face to face than when you're actually communicating through a CMC. And listen, sometimes you may not have a choice. CMC may be all you have. That is better than nothing. That concludes this chapter.